I'm a Special Olympics medical director down here in the Tucson area, and I work at the University Hospital taking care of adults. So and Lisa said that people had a lot of questions about vaccines, and specifically the COVID vaccine. So I thought I would just start with a kind of an overview of vaccines, if that's okay, real quick, to get us all sort of on the same page. And then you guys can start asking questions. So we'll be talking about the COVID virus. I'm sure everyone by now knows what the COVID virus is, but the COVID-19 virus, it's a virus. That means it's, viruses are real common. They're just all sorts of viruses. Some of them don't cause much trouble. They give you a little cold. Others can make you really, really sick. COVID happens to be a type of virus that can make you really, really sick and even, make you end up in the hospital. So it's an important virus to have a vaccine against. What's a vaccine? Most of you have probably gotten a vaccine or several at some point when you were kids, because most little kids get vaccines. And a vaccine is a kind of medicine that protects you against infections. And it can, in fact, protect you against a lot of viral infections. So you get a vaccine by an injection, and it helps your body fight diseases. When you get a disease like a virus, say you get a cold and a virus goes in your body, that virus triggers a response in your body, and your body makes a lot of special proteins called antibodies, these special things, along with some other cells in your body that can fight the virus and get rid of it. Unfortunately, our bodies, many of us have trouble fighting off the COVID virus on our own. So when we have that kind of a disease, it's good to make a vaccine. What a vaccine does is it takes an teensy piece of a virus and puts it in your body and tricks your body into thinking you have an infection. So your body makes all the antibodies, it makes all the things that are going to fight the virus, but there's really no virus there. The good news is then the next time you run into it, your body's all ready to go. So your body will start pouring out all those special proteins, all those special things in your blood to fight the virus, and you won't get sick, or you'll get much less sick. So the COVID vaccine, there are 2 COVID vaccines right now that are available to us in the United States that have been approved. One's called the Pfizer, and that means that one you have to take 2 shots 3 weeks apart. The other is called the Moderna vaccine, and that one you have to take the shots 4 weeks apart. Like all vaccines, they've been studied really carefully. Both of them had somewhere between 15,000 to 21,000 people in each group in their study. And the way that you look at a vaccine is you give, say, 15,000 people the vaccine. You give 15,000 people just like a little saltwater injection, so there's nothing in it, right? And then you watch them for months and you see who gets sick with COVID and who doesn't. And when they did that, when they tested these vaccines, they found out that, in fact, a lot more people got sick. 9 times as many people got sick if they didn't have the vaccine than if they had had the vaccine. So that means when you look at the numbers, that the vaccine is 95% effective, meaning 95 times out of 100, if you have the vaccine, you're not going to get that virus where the other person might. And the people that did get sick with the virus were less sick if they had had the vaccine. So there's a whole bunch of steps that we go through to sort of create a vaccine and then approve it for use in people. And I can answer questions about that if you like, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more about getting the vaccine and how you get it, and then I'll open it up to questions. So if you get the vaccine, it's free. This vaccine, there should be no charge for this vaccine. It's being given out, managed in our state through the county health departments, and in some cases through the VA and through the tribal communities, tribal governments. And the way it's given out, because we don't have enough to just give it to everybody yet, is it's taking certain people first. And this is called phases. And I'm going to tell you what the phases are, but I also want you to know that each county is really in charge of their own distribution. So whatever county you live in, like if you live in Cochise or Pima or Maricopa, the way to get the specific information about whether you might be eligible to get the vaccine yet is to go on that county website. The first group they started immunizing was people that were working in the hospitals, right? Because if all the doctors in the hospitals got sick, there wouldn't be anybody left to take care of all the sick COVID people. And right now, of our sickest people, 6 out of 10 of them that are in the ICU are COVID patients. So we really need to keep the doctors from catching COVID from their patients and then maybe even giving it to other patients. So the first people that got vaccinated in most states were doctors, nurses, even, people that did the cleaning and changed the sheets, everybody who was taking care of patients inside the hospital. And then it moved to doctors that were taking care of patients outside the hospital, because obviously we're seeing a lot of people that come in with a cough or, oh, it's just my allergies, and it turns out to be COVID, so we're all getting exposed out there as well. Then they started giving the injections to people in nursing homes, long-term care facilities, because those people were getting COVID really easily because they're all living together in one big place. And because they're so old, the COVID was rougher on them, so they were more likely to have serious problems with it. So all those people are just now in Arizona starting to get vaccinated. And that's run by the federal government. So that's why it seems a little out of sync with everything else. So that's phase 1A. Then there's phase 1B. And this is adults who have risky medical conditions, and I'll talk a little bit about what those are, who are living in shelters or other congregate settings. So one of the things that has been going on is that it's not clear to everybody exactly what a congregate setting is. It is like if 6 people or 3 people live in a group home together, is that a congregate setting? But I would say if you have a high risk disease, you should try and get on the website and see if you can get yourself a COVID vaccine, or talk to your own doctor about helping you do that. High risk for COVID, if you're significantly overweight, if you have diabetes.
I get it too, man.
If you have lung disease.
I get it.
And then if you have certain things that affect your ability to take deep breaths, like you have cerebral palsy, or people who have Down syndrome are also in and of themselves a high risk group, because we have some studies now that show us that they have a harder time with fighting off the COVID, and they're more likely to have to go to the hospital. So I've been really pushing my patients with Down syndrome to sort of look into who they are. Right now in Pima County, they're starting with people who are the first responders, like police, paramedics, those kind of people, and teachers. And then they're going to move to adults over 75, and then people in congregate settings. That's all sort of in one group. And again, every county is doing it a tiny bit differently, so you have to look at your own county. And then in the phase 1C, which will come a little later after we get all the 1B people, that's where it's everybody over 65, anybody that lives in a congregate setting. And by congregate setting, I mean you live with a group of people, that not just your family, but a group of people like in a group home or something like that. And then any adult with any underlying medical condition, whether they're living in a group setting or not. So those are sort of the ways. And then after that, it'll be everybody. And hopefully by summer, anybody who wants to can get a vaccine. The vaccine hasn't been tested in kids that are under 12 yet, or in pregnant women yet. So they're not being given out in those people yet. I can open up for questions now. And if people want to know, like get into more about like how it was approved, or what kind of vaccine it is, it's an mRNA vaccine, so it is a new kind of vaccine for some folks. I'm those questions too.
Quick question.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jared.
Okay. So I have cerebral palsy, and I also have severe hearing loss. And I weigh about, I think, 166 pounds.
Okay.
And I have a very active lifestyle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
So what are your concerns? Because I know you said something about people with cerebral palsy.
yeah, so a lot of people with cerebral palsy, and I don't know if this applies to you particularly, Jared, but they can't really take big, deep breaths. So they tend to get pneumonia a little more easily. So any of my patients who have that history of like getting pneumonia easily, I'm trying to get them the vaccine. Now, if they're living in their own home, which a lot of my patients are, they're not yet eligible for the vaccine. But in the next phase, if they're living in their own home, they'll be able to get it. In this phase, you have to
So
have that plus live in a
so
group home or, you know, some group setting. So we
so I have a
usually,
question for you.
yeah,
So I live with two other roommates. Is that what you would consider a group of people?
I would. And if I were you, and if you were my patient, I'd advise you to get on the website and click off that you are living, you have a high risk condition and you live in a congregate setting, and see them. They may ask you more questions, and each county is deciding that differently, what they consider a congregate setting.
Okay. Could you maybe when you get off, could you like find out from Mojave County? Because I'm honestly I'm just all over the place.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that for everyone. So what I suggest is call your own doctor's office, or
Okay.
call someone who you often go to when you need a little help with something. You know, whoever in your life is a good supporter for things like that.
Dr. Bassford,
Yes,
I have several questions that come through on the chat. If I could ask you a few of those.
sure, Bet.
So Connor asked, which one could I take? And then Amber wanted to know, when can we get the vaccine? So first, Connor, which one could I take? Which vaccine?
If I would take whichever one I can get first. The Pfizer and the Moderna both require 2 shots. They work about as well as each other. No significant difference in how effective they are. And they both have some side effects. Usually more after the second shot than the first, because it's your body doing its job. It's getting all that immune stuff going. Both of them can give you a sore arm, can give you a fever, and can make you feel kind of achy. You have a headache for probably 2 days. Anything beyond that, if you're sick beyond that, you should see your doctor, because it's probably something else. But either
I
vaccine.
think they wanted them as soon as possible,
Okay, and then
but
there,
we
if
had to fix the
you guys
printer.
can please
If
mute
I remember
yourself
right,
if you
they
want.
were asking for them last day,
Thank
but
you. So another question we had was for Amber, when can we get the vaccine? And I think you kind of covered that it depends on where you live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you gotta keep it, you know, you gotta look at the county websites. Your doctors should also be following this and be able to answer questions for you. And keep your eye out. A lot of times they'll put like a box on the front of the paper that'll say, okay, Pima County is moving into phase 1B, go to this website. And Pima County also has a telephone number that you can call. So if you go to the, if you try and get the telephone number for the general county health department that you're in, they might be able to switch you over to someone who can talk to you by phone.
Okay. And then I'm not sure if you can answer this one, but it was Stacy wanted to know, is it no charge for people with no insurance as well?
It's no charge for anybody.
Okay. That was federally mandated, wasn't it?
Correct. The government decided smartly.
What if I'm not eligible for the vaccine with the insurance I have?
You don't have to worry about your insurance at all. You'll get the vaccine if you're eligible, whether you have insurance or not. That's the best way that everybody can get immunized, and then nobody will be giving the virus to each other anymore. So the government decided nobody was going to have to pay for it. The
Dr.
government
Bassford, I have a question. I just got my vaccine today, and I went to the Cardinals thing today, and I just went right in, and I have to go back. They said I have to go back into the next time. But I wondered, do I have to go to the same location that I got the first shot at?
Probably, yes. They should have given you a little card that says. the
They did,
date
they
of your
did, they did
yeah.
today, so.
So you
Oh,
go back to the same place.
And I'll
I just
read
have
one or
my-
two more questions and then open it back up. We have a
Okay,
lot coming through the chat. Robin Ring, she's one of our athletes on here right now. She asked a question. Do people that have heart problems also need to get this? Is it recommended that they also get the vaccine?
yes, definitely, Robin. If you have a heart problem, that often puts you in a high risk category. All right, thanks.
And that's no matter the age.
Right. Again, this is all going to be adults. Right now, unless you're over 75, the only way your high-risk condition sort of gets you the vaccine is if you live with a group other than your family. When we get to the next phase, then it's going to be anybody with a high-risk condition, any age, no matter what your living situation is.
Dr. Bassford, if I could just get, I had 3 questions. A couple were emailed to me. The first one was, I was wondering what's the difference between Pfizer and Moderna. Heard that the second dose of Pfizer has some rough side effects.
Yeah, I think I actually got that question and was looking at it. I've heard side effects that are a little different from both of them. A lot of people say the second one, about 50% of people will get a fever after the second dose of either vaccine. I have heard with the Moderna, if you have silicone implants, like if you've gotten silicone injected in your lips or something, you can get some local swelling. And so you always need to, they ask you that before you get it. But other than that, it's pretty similar between the two: fever, headache, and you can feel crummy for a couple days. It's like having the flu, but it isn't COVID, so it isn't going to go on for 4 weeks and take your smell away and put you in the hospital with pneumonia. But you feel crummy. You can feel crummy for a couple days. Other people just sail through it. I got my first shot, and I just had a sore arm, and and that lasted 12 hours. I took some Motrin, so.
Okay, and the next question was, my question is, how can we attempt to reach herd immunity via vaccination if so many people refuse to get vaccinated? Is there an implication of the vaccine becoming mandatory?
Yeah, that, it would be better if more people got the vaccine. We're never going to get herd immunity with this disease without the vaccine. We never got, I'm old enough that I remember when the first polio vaccine came out. I was in kindergarten, and I just remember how happy my parents were because polio put kids in iron lungs. I mean, it was a serious disease, and every parent was terrified of polio. And polio was really the first really widespread vaccine, childhood vaccine in America. And you know what? We never got herd immunity from polio. Every summer it would come, and it would make a bunch of kids sick, make them lose control of their arms and legs. And we never got herd immunity. Really, we never got herd immunity for smallpox. Really serious diseases, you don't get herd immunity because people die from them. You get herd immunity from the cold, where people get a cold, they still go to school, they walk around, and nobody dies from it. And that's how you get herd immunity. So we really do need the vaccines, I think, to hit a reasonable level of herd immunity. For the rest of us who get our vaccines, we're reducing our risk, okay? But we're not making the risk zero. So until more people are vaccinated, all of us, whether we're vaccinated or not, should still wear masks, should still do the social distancing for 2 reasons. One, there are a lot of people out there that are going to be carrying COVID and not be symptomatic about it, and you still have a tiny chance of getting it. And 2, if you should run into the COVID virus and it's in your body's fighting it, you're not going to get sick, but we don't know yet if you can still give it to someone while your body's fighting it off. So for those 2 reasons, it's still better to mask and social distance.
And one of the athletes asked if they already had COVID, do they still need to get the shot?
Yes. One of the things we don't know, back in my day, I got, chickenpox and measles and all that stuff. And I was pretty lucky. I didn't get too sick with them. And then I knew I could never get them again. because the natural disease kind of gave you enough immunity for the most part. We don't know that yet about COVID. Not every disease gives you long-lasting immunity. Sometimes it only lasts for 6 months or a year. We know that the type of cells that the vaccines are stimulating are much more effective. It's a higher number of the cells that are really good at killing COVID virus particularly. So it may be that we're getting a better vaccine response in our bodies from the vaccine than the actual COVID. So everybody who's had COVID is still recommended to get the COVID, just because then we know that you're going to have the best immune response against the COVID.
Dr. Bassford,
Yes.
what about those who have high blood sugar?
People with high blood sugar are in a high risk group. If you have high blood sugar, you either have diabetes or you have pre-diabetes. In other words, you're heading toward diabetes. Certainly diabetes, we know, is a risk factor, not for getting COVID. Everybody gets it about the same, but for getting sick with COVID. So that's why we're trying to get those folks vaccinated, the folks that are more likely to get super sick. And the biggest risk factor in young people is being overweight, even without diabetes. Any other questions?
Yes, we had a few more come through the chat.
Okay.
This is Ryan Rosas. It's Lisa's son. A lot of people had her son's name. But to me, I'm not sure who gave this question, but I got my first shot. My question is, do I have to go to the same location that I attended?
Yes.
And then this one's from Angelica Raya. For those that might be nervous to get the vaccine, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, okay. Well, if you've ever gotten a vaccine before that you can remember, maybe some of you get the flu vaccine. I would just kind of remember this vaccine, even though it's like for a new disease, it's not any different than the vaccines that we always get. In fact, it's a little better in some ways. So just try and remember that you've done this before, you've gotten shots before, and it's going to be okay. Also know that you can expect that you might not feel so good for 2 days. And so if you kind of know that might happen, and there are things you can do for it, like depending on whether you can take Motrin or not, you can take that, or you can take Tylenol, you can put a cool cloth or an ice pack on your arm if it's sore. You can put a cool cloth on your head if you have a headache. You can make sure that you have someone who's going to hang out with you for a couple days after the vaccine and just make sure that you're feeling okay.
That's good advice. Connor has a few coming in. He first asks, after I get the vaccine, would you recommend that I stay home to let the vaccine work through my body? And then should he wear a mask after he gets the shot?
Yes, you should wear a mask. Any point that you're wearing a mask now, you should wear a mask after the shot. So it doesn't make any difference. So you won't change that. Wherever you wear a mask now, that's where you should wear it. You don't have to worry about, like, there's nothing in the vaccine that you can give to another person. Way back in the old days, the first vaccines we had were actual viruses, and sometimes they could actually make people sick because it was a whole virus that could just make you sick like the real disease. We stopped doing that, and then we started using dead viruses. And that could still make you kind of sick, but it couldn't really give you the whole disease. Then we started using viruses that we chopped up, and ground up and put in your body. This is a vaccine where we put something called mRNA in that can create one protein, one little tiniest speck out of the whole virus. And that's enough to stimulate your body to go, hey, it's a virus, even though it isn't, and start making antibodies. But it can't reproduce itself in your body. So it really can't make you like sick. It just makes you, what you're feeling after the vaccine is your own immune system revving up, because that can give you a fever and that can give you body ache.
With that, really quick, Dr. Bassford, I'm assuming then if you exercise after you get the shot, you probably should let your body rest for a few days just because your immune system's already been compromised.
I don't think I didn't really do anything different. I think people know their own bodies. Some people feel a lot better when they exercise. Others feel like maybe if they, if they're coming down with a fever, they don't feel so well if they're exercising, but there's no real prohibition on any of your normal activities. Always drink plenty of water. That's my rule for everything.
And then Connor had a second question about, would you recommend that he stays home right after to let the vaccine work through his body?
No, it won't matter if you're moving or resting, the vaccine will still do its job in your body. It doesn't really, the vaccine itself will work the same way, whether you're resting or whether you're walking around.
I had one more question emailed to me as well, Dr. Bassford. While I understand long-term effects are still unknown, what is the evidence that vaccines like these cause women to become sterile?
There really isn't any evidence for this type of vaccine to cause sterility. It's a vaccine. I can talk a little bit if the people that get bored by this will bear with me, but the vaccine itself is made of a one molecule that's called RNA. And that's a little tiny molecule that when it's in your body, it instructs your cell to make a protein. And this particular RNA is telling your cell to make this one tiny piece of the virus called the spike protein, okay? The RNA can't duplicate itself. So within a day of being in your body, the RNA itself is destroyed by other things in your body, the normal things that get rid of foreign tissue in your body, and your body's revving up to kill off all the spike protein, and there can't be any more spike protein made because there's no more RNA because it disappears after a day. So in terms of like long-term effects of the vaccine itself, there just isn't any mechanism for it having any long-term effects on any of your organs. I'd say the only possibility is everybody with any vaccine can get an autoimmune response. In other words, your body revs up a little too much. But that can also happen by getting COVID. That happens a lot with the actual disease of COVID. It can happen with peanuts, and it can happen with all sorts of other naturally occurring diseases that you run into all the time. And most of the time, people with this kind of disease, it happens we don't know why, it just happens. So I haven't read any concerns about autoimmune diseases being related to the COVID vaccine. And most autoimmune diseases really hit other, like your skin and your joints. And, it's not like a big fertility risk per se. So I was thinking about that. I can't really think of I know I haven't read any case studies, but I also can't really think of a logical mechanism that would cause infertility.
Thank you. One of the other questions in the chat, what are the chances of getting deathly sick after you receive the first shot?
Very low. There's a very low reaction to the first shot. Almost everyone gets a sore arm, though some people don't. Most people do not get a fever. More people will get a fever after the second shot. And between the two shots, there have been about 60,000 people followed, and there were no serious serious side effects from the vaccine. There were side effects, but none of them were end up in the hospital, serious side effects. So
Awesome. We have lots of good questions. Gianna said, I know some people are nervous about the vaccine because of how quickly it was approved. How would you explain to people that the vaccine is safe, even though it was approved much quicker than other vaccines people may be familiar with?
This is a great question, Gianna. I'm glad you asked it. The vaccine really wasn't approved that much quicker. The vaccine was developed more quickly than the vaccines we're used to. And the reason of that wasn't that people were rushing, is that we got to skip a whole step that usually takes a really long time. So if you can bear with me, a typical virus, say, that pops up in China, okay, we have to wait till we get the virus itself from out of people, culture it, figure out, it sounds dumb, even though it's easy to grow viruses in people, it's really hard to grow viruses in the laboratory. So you have to find cells to grow the virus in. You have to create enough virus that you can do all these tests, and then you have to create the vaccine from those viruses, and then you're always making mistakes. You pick one part of the virus, it's not the right part, it doesn't really do much. So you're doing all this lab stuff, and then you start testing on animals. So that whole lab part of it got eliminated, because with the RNA vaccine, what they did is very early, like a month after COVID first got described, China published the entire DNA sequence of COVID. And the RNA that I'm talking about is made from the DNA of the virus. It's the DNA of the virus that makes the RNA that allows the virus to make all these proteins and do its thing. So once that, and by published, I mean, they wrote it down. It's like, looks like a series of letters that scientists know what that means. So once they wrote it down, every scientist in the world started replicating that DNA. They didn't have to grow the whole virus. They just replicated the DNA, and then they started making RNA molecules from that. So if you can imagine, they're doing a gazillion molecules. They don't have to worry about growing them in, chick cells and stuff. And then they could do all the testing about what part of the vaccine worked better. And that was the part that usually takes a full year in and of itself, that happened really quickly. So it went through all the usual steps that every other vaccine goes through. There was lab work, then there was animal studies. Then then you have to get special permission from the Food and Drug Administration to do studies in people. So then you do studies in people. And first you just do studies to make sure you're not hurting them. And then you do bigger studies to make sure that it works. And then, and only then, with all that data and information, and I've read both studies, like the actual data from both studies for both vaccines. Both were published in the New England Journal of Medicine. So it's not like there's anything secret about it. The FDA has a group that includes doctors and biochemists and infectious disease specialists and all sorts of guys that study molecules, and they look at all this, and they look at all the data, and they decide whether they think it's effective, safe, and good enough for enough people. In other words, it's a disease that you would bother to immunize against, right? So there wasn't steps.
I have
Hang on
one.
one sec, Connor.
Oh,
Hang
okay.
on one sec, okay? None of those steps were skipped in the process. The only thing that we could skip was the part about having to grow the virus, because yay, science, DNA, RNA, we know how to do things more effectively and efficiently now. And this is the first RNA vaccine that's been used in such a broad manner. So it is new for people, and it's clear that people have a lot of questions about it, which they should, but it's kind of a neat technology.
Wonderful. Can you get the vaccine outside of the county in which you live?
No.
Okay.
You need to get it in your own county.
Okay, and then Stan had a couple questions. What are the chances of the second shot not being available? And what do you know about the Johnson & Johnson shot availability?
I know nothing about the Johnson & Johnson shot availability in the US, and that's really what I'm concentrating on, because that's where all my patients live. And I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the first question, Lisa.
What are the chances of the second shot not being available?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a calculated risk that both presidents have decided, the one that's outgoing and the one that's incoming, decided was the right thing to do. About 2 weeks ago, President Trump started talking about releasing all the vaccines and not saving half of them for that second shot. As far as I can tell from, well, I know from President Biden's plan, that's his plan is to release the vaccines. He's also invoked a defense act that will enlist other companies in making more vaccine. So the hope is that we get all those first shots out, and then with more companies revved up to produce the vaccine, that we'll be able to get all the second shots. So it's a little bit of a calculated risk. The first vaccine does give you some protection, maybe 50% protection. So you're kind of overall reducing the population, the prevalence of the COVID. It's just been, it's been tough because the vaccines have not come quickly and they haven't been distributed effectively. There wasn't really like a national organized way of getting these vaccines out quickly. So everybody's been doing it their own way, you know, state by state, county by county, and it hasn't been extremely effective and efficient. So I think releasing all these vaccines will double the amount of people that can get vaccines now, which makes me happy in one way, because at least people that I'm worried about can get started. And we're just going to have to hope that revving up the vaccine production and entering into, you know, more competitive contracts and stuff with some of the vaccine manufacturers are going to get more vaccine, those second doses of vaccine out there. So I'm not, again, knowing if this were the old type of vaccine, I'd be more worried because each vaccine itself takes longer to actually make, but this is a more mechanized, efficient production method. So
I've got 2 more in here, 3 more now, and you know.
Okay, I got it. Go ahead.
For you, well.
What?
The first one is, why can you donate plasma after the shot? And have they done a lot of research on it?
I'm sorry, could you say the first part, Lisa? You broke up a little bit on my.
I'm sorry. Why can you donate plasma after you get the shot? And have they done a lot of research?
Oh yeah, so the plasma donation is what we really like is when people have COVID and then they donate their plasma, because we take that plasma and we being, you know, doctors, medical scientists, we concentrate it down, we find those antibodies that I was talking about that fight the COVID are really high in people who've just had it. So we can concentrate them down, and then there's certain people we know are going to get sick with COVID. If someone comes in and they have really bad lung disease and they have COVID, we want to treat them with something before they get real sick. And this is called Immunoglobulin Therapy. And it's available not like in your local doctor's office, but I know it's available at 2 places in Tucson. I'm sure it's available a number of places in Maricopa County. Usually it's at a larger hospital or a university hospital. So we have a COVID, an immunoglobulin clinic running that's running infusions. You only have to have 1 infusion on about 20 to 30 people a day now who are at high risk for developing complications of COVID. And it's pretty exciting. And I'd love to get the word out about that. So I'm glad someone asked, because if you think you're high risk and you get diagnosed with COVID, you should try and look for an immunoglobulin clinic and see if they'll accept you. You have to be within 10 days of your first symptom, I think, for it to work. So.
Awesome. And then Paul asked, since I live in Tempe, the place I went to for the vaccine was Glendale. Why does Tempe not have enough places for the vaccine?
Well, the counties are really, are they separate counties or are they the same?
I think they're probably the same.
Yeah, so counties, in their mind, as long as they have enough places in the whole county, they're kind of doing their job. And I know they try and spread them out as best they can to not make the transportation too much of a burden for people, but.
Okay. And I think you already answered this. They will be giving the shots to people who've had COVID, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then Gianna asked, will this vaccine protect against any strands of the virus?
I can't tell you that for sure, but so far, the testing that they've done on the spike protein between these different viral strains looks like it's the same. So whatever mutation occurred that's making it a little more infectious doesn't so far seem to have affected that spike protein. If there comes along a mutation, and we can't ever know that it won't, that affects the spike protein, the good thing to know is there's a lot of other potential proteins in the hopper. These companies don't just research one protein in these immunization. So there'll be other proteins that we can try to, kind of take care of that new virus. But so far, knock on wood, so far it hasn't affected the spike protein.
Perfect. And then Connor said he has 30 friends that are easily high risk, 40 and younger. Would they be considered to be in the phase 1 group?
They would be in phase 1C if they're not living in a group setting. But right now it's phase 1B. So people that are high risk and living in a group setting, or anyone over 75, as well as our police officers, our fire department personnel, EMTs, and teachers, those kind of frontline people that you don't want sicking out. Yeah.
Doctor, unfortunately for our special needs delegation, half of our delegation live in group homes.
Then those are the folks I would encourage to talk to their own doctor about whether they're high risk or not, and see if they can get vaccinated now.
Doctor, I have a question. I'm considered 1B because I'm a frontline worker because I'm an essential worker at a store. So I'm in the group that got the shot.
Yeah.
I'm in the first group, and if I'm correct, and
You were in the second group, so that's great. Restaurant workers aren't, and food service workers are considered that front line, grocery store clerks and stuff like that, but not quite yet in our county. They're kind of behind the 75-year-olds, the people high risk in group settings, and like the police and EMTs and stuff like that. And again, every county is doing it a tiny bit differently.
Go ahead, Josh.
I have a question. So is it true like certain blood types can get the virus? Like not as bad though, but.
No, I'm not aware of any data that suggests having one blood type or another has anything to do with whether you can catch it or how badly you get it. And
then another question, is it true like after you take the shot, if you have a good immune system, can you get the side effects?
Yes, the side effects are really you feeling your immune system revving up. And anytime your immune system is creating all these things to fight any kind of disease, it causes what we call an inflammatory response, which is that you can get a fever, you can get muscle aches, and you can get soreness where the virus or the viral part, in this case, entered your body. So one way to look at it is I'm telling people, look, if you're feeling kind of crummy that first day, just think of it as your immune system doing its job and revving up.
Okay.
Another question, are you only supposed to get it once? Are you able to get the virus again once you had it?
If you get the 2 vaccines, we know at least for like 6 months, you shouldn't get the virus. We're following everybody now to see, is there a point at which the effectiveness runs out? There's some reasons scientifically to think it's not going to run out like right at 6 months, just because of the type of cells that have been activated by the vaccine. But it's one of those things. I don't know if it's going to be one of those vaccines that you have to get once a year, every 2 years, every 5 years, every 10 years. All vaccines have a shelf life in your body. Got to get tetanus every 10 years, right? Because it just won't last that long. You got to get an influenza vaccine every year. We don't know where COVID is on that spectrum yet.
And let's see, Connor. Oh, Connor has to go. He said, thank you.
Bye, Connor. Thanks for your questions.
And he asked if you were going to have one more class. And I did email you, Dr. Bassford, to see if we could maybe do an evening class. I had some parents who couldn't get off for work. So you and I can touch base on that.
Touch base on. It's just I can do it. It's just a question of when I can do it. So we'll talk about it.
Does anybody else have questions?
So my doctor.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, Connor.
And will you have more than one class, even though I'm gonna miss the rest?
I don't know yet, but Lisa is going to work on that with me.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Bassford.
You're welcome. Now, who else was trying to ask a question?
Josh.
Okay,
Me.
Josh.
Now, once you get the shot, you are still immune to get the virus?
Once you get the shot, you have a much lower chance of getting the virus, but it's not impossible. But if you
So
get
that means we can return to Special Olympics, right?
if enough people get the shot, certainly being able to return to things like Special Olympics and going to your favorite restaurants, those are all the things that we want. It depends a little bit, I think, on how do you handle that? Do you just keep Special Olympics kind of shut down until enough people get the shots? Do you only let people who've had the shot come into Special Olympics? It kind of gets a little complicated because
What's this extra wire? I don't know. Touch it.
we don't have a law that says you have to get the shot. So until enough people choose to get the shot, it's going to be a little touch and go with some of these group activities.
You know, with
I have
production,
a question.
you know, with production.
Yes.
All right, I'll set her down.
So if I get the vaccine and all that, can people that like to have a drink, can they drink alcohol, or is that like is that not advised, or what are you thinking?
Alcohol. No, you can drink alcohol. I mean,
Okay.
if that's your usual thing that you do. I probably would recommend not drinking alcohol the first 2 days, because
Okay.
if you're dehydrated, and alcohol will dehydrate you.
Okay.
If you're dehydrated, you're going to feel worse after the vaccine.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem. I just figured I asked just in case anybody wanted to know. That's all.
I think it's always good to have one person in every group who will ask that kind of question, Jared. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Another question, Dr. Bassford, in the chat was, what if you have been around a lot of people that have had COVID, but you haven't had it yet?
Mhm.
And that came in the chat, and I honestly feel like I probably have it. I just have never gotten tested. So what if you've been around people and you haven't been tested or have been tested and you've been negative?
It doesn't matter. You need to go get the vaccine, because we know if you haven't had COVID, you need to get the vaccine. And if you had COVID and just didn't realize it because you were lucky and didn't have any symptoms, you still need to get the vaccine. So there's no need to test yourself or look for antibodies or any of that stuff to make that decision, because both ways it's fine to get the vaccine, and it's recommended to get the vaccine.
Perfect. Are there other questions? Anybody want to unmute?
Dr. Bassford,
Yes.
Wait till
you
he's-
would probably be seeing me next Tuesday because we have that training Tuesday.
Excellent. Yeah, good reminder. Any of you who have expressed interest in doing the teaching event in February with the U of A students, this is the last week to sign up for the training, because our trainings are going to be next week and the week before. So sign up. And if you're having trouble with the website or something, call Valerie and she'll help you. Or maybe Lisa.
Okay.
So,
What's the training?
I would be happy to help.
thanks, Lisa.
It's a 3-hour class.
No, it's an hour and a half. It's not 3 hours. Don't worry about it.
Oh,
We wouldn't do
okay.
that. We wouldn't do that. I can't be entertaining for 3 hours, so there's no way.
So what's the training for?
Oh, we had put out a call for people that might be interested in helping me teach a class of about 400 students about disabilities and how to be better doctors, nurses, public health workers, pharmacists for people with disabilities. And so there was a bunch of like informational sessions, which we've already had. And so now we have our folks that we're going to train about it. If you think you might be interested, it's something that happens every year. So next year, in sort of September, October, keep an ear out, because we'll probably put out another call for volunteers, and we can always use more folks to help us. What we're interested in is folks who lived with disabilities, who can talk to students about what makes a good doctor or a good nurse for them, like based on their own experiences.
Have about 6 minutes, guys. Does anybody else want to unmute and ask any questions?
I do.
Oh, Paul, shoot.
My question is, if are all primary care doctors going to have the? Because I don't know how it is by county, but you know if all eventually, do you know if all the primary care doctors are going to have the shots?
But you mean gonna have the shot in their office to give or get the shot?
Yes, to have the shot to give, like if.
No, it's gonna happen at this point through immunization clinics. Jared, could you mute Jared? Thank you.
Can I
It's gonna
repeat my
happen.
question?
Yeah, it's gonna happen through immunization clinics. Now, maybe as this big push to get everyone immunized settles down, then it'll probably be more like flu vaccines or other vaccines that you can get in your doctor's office. But for this first push for this year, it's all going to be through very regimented vaccine clinics. Because they're also, now, they're set up.
I know that some people were asking about, I know that some people were asking about it for their doctors and
excuse me,
we're doing for all the other, what the plan was for the doctor's office.
Not going to be in doctor's offices for a while, Paul. Did someone else have a question?
Jared, did you have something?
Yeah, I was actually trying to talk to someone, and you guys were talking a little bit loud, and I actually have you guys talking through my hearing aids.
Okay.
Dr. Bassford, a question.
Yes.
Can you, like, let's say if we go to the bathroom, can the shots, liquids actually flush out of our system?
No. The liquid is, whatever, salt water. So that just kind of enters your bloodstream. And then I guess eventually some of that might get out of your system. But the molecules themselves stay in your system and then they fall apart. So they just turn into little pieces of amino acid, basically. So nothing that you're going to notice flushing out of your system. And it won't, like, if you go to the bathroom, you don't have to worry that you're peeing out all that good medicine or anything. Just go to the bathroom as you normally would.
They told me that the effect of it was like 60%, because I went to the stadium today and they said it was 60% for the first.
From the first, yeah, 50 or 60%. And then the second one, 95%. So
yeah, that's what they told me because what you said to the other ones was a bit off, but I was told by the doc, I was told at the stadium that one of the nurses said that that's what it was for the effect. You have to wait, that if you're in a car of people, you have to wait 30 minutes and then they send you off on your way. If you're doing if you're going to a drive-through clinic.
Yep. It's very exciting. I had a drive-through experience myself. It's kind of fun how they have it all set up. Pretty impressive.
I know.
I guess
This is Stacy. This is Stacy, and I just want to say congratulations to Paul. I'm really excited that you got your vaccine today.
Woo!
Yeah, I know.
Woo!
Woo!
Because my brother signed me up for it, and I thought I'm gonna get it today, and then I'm gonna go back and pretty soon and get another. I think in February sometime, but I'm gonna get my other shot.
Good job.
Great job, Paul.
Lisa.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you go back for your follow-up, it's not any different from the first shot you get then. So they're basically the same shot.
It's the same shot, right? That's why we can use them interchangeably. It's the same medicine. It's just 2 doses of it. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not that they have a reserve of the second dose. It's whatever
No,
comes in.
they're all the same. Yeah, exactly.
Josh, did you have one more question?
No, I actually have a question for you, Lisa.
Okay, I'll chat with you off when we jump off, Josh. I did want to say thank you to Dr. Bassford. This was amazing. You answered so many questions for us. We are so lucky and blessed to have you to donate your time because I know it's valuable. Several comments in the chat saying thank you. For anybody that has nothing to do at 6 o'clock, we have our FAM meeting. We will have Cynthia McCluskey from the Arizona Autism Society on talking about Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance and all that fun stuff. So I will send that link out. Or Gianna actually put it in the chat. So if you want to sign up, we'd love to have you. And Dr. Bassford, anything else before we end?
I think you guys covered it pretty well. I figured
Thank you,
would.
Dr. Bassford.
Yes, thank you. And thank
My
you everyone
pleasure.
for attending. We appreciate seeing all of you.
Thank you very much. All right, bye.
It was good to see everybody.
I will see you Tuesday.
Yes, I'll see you Tuesday.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Dr. Bassford.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.